It's June 24th, 2026. Welcome to yes2hellwith.com. Have you ever heard of the phrase de facto? Most people have, but very few understand its significance. The Latin phrase de facto simply means in fact or in practice. It describes something that exists because it is being exercised or accepted, not necessarily because it is lawful. Its opposite is de jure, which means by law or by right. A de jure authority derives its legitimacy from a lawful source. A de facto authority derives its influence from the simple fact that it exercises power. That distinction may seem academic, but it is one of the most important concepts in understanding freedom and liberty. Consider a military coup. A group of generals overthrows a nation's lawful government and assumes control. They command the army, they collect taxes, they issue orders, they control the courts, they govern the country. In practice, they are the government. They are the government de facto. But are they the lawful government? Not necessarily. They possess power. Whether they possess lawful authority is an entirely different question. Or consider a neighborhood controlled by a criminal gang. The gang tells businesses when to open. It decides who may operate. People obey because they fear the consequences. The gang exercises tremendous power. But no one would seriously argue that the gang possesses lawful authority simply because people comply. Power alone does not create legitimacy. History teaches this lesson repeatedly. Kings have ruled by force. Empires have ruled by conquest. Dictators have ruled through fear. Their governments were certainly real. They exercised enormous power, but the exercise of power alone never answered the deeper question. By what rightful authority do they govern? Unfortunately, modern society often confuses these two very different ideas. We frequently assume that because a government does something, it therefore has the unquestioned authority to do it. We confuse enforcement with legitimacy. We confuse administration with authority. We confuse compliance with obligation. That confusion has profound consequences, because once people begin believing that every exercise of government power is automatically legitimate, they stop asking the most important questions. They no longer ask, where does this authority come from? What law creates this obligation? What jurisdiction applies? What limits exist upon this power? Instead, they simply ask, what do I have to do? That is not the mindset of a free people. Freedom has never depended merely upon the existence of government. Freedom depends upon government remaining within the lawful limits of its authority. Natural rights do not exist because a government permits them. Governments did not invent liberty. They did not create freedom. The American founding reflected the principle that rights are inherent, that governments are instituted to secure those rights, not to manufacture them. If our liberties exist only because officials allow us to exercise them, then they are no longer rights at all. They have become privileges, and privileges can be expanded, restricted, suspended, or revoked whenever those holding power choose to do so. That is why de facto government is not the path to freedom. A society built upon de facto power gradually teaches its citizens to obey because authority is asserted rather than demonstrated. A free society demands something more. It requires government to identify the lawful source of its authority. It requires clearly defined jurisdiction. It requires due process and accountability, and that power remains subordinate to the law, not the other way around. The preservation of liberty, therefore, begins with a simple but profound question. Am I complying because someone possesses power, or because lawful authority has actually been established. That question has shaped the course of history. It separated free men from subjects. It distinguished constitutional government from arbitrary rule. And it remains just as important today as it was when the great republics of history were first established. Because when a people stop distinguishing between de facto power and lawful authority, they slowly surrender the very freedom they believe they still possess. So the question today is, do you exist within a de facto regime or under limited de jure constitutional authority? Think about that. And as always, may truth reign supreme.